Hello everyone and welcome back to our town. So we are now in the 90s and we'll go through what fun and exciting things we had in the 90s. So the population in 1990 at the start of this decade was 57.25 million people, and by the end in 1999 we had a population of 58.668 million people. Life expectancy was getting higher. It is now at 77.39 years of age. GDP in the beginning of the 90s has just sneaked over the 1.09 trillion dollars, and by the end of the 90s in 1999 we are up to 1.6 trillion. Weather-wise, in the 90s, it was pretty dry, pretty sunny, and a lot more heat waves more frequently as well. Obviously, the wonderful effects of global warming kicking in and having more heat waves. But we do have the occasional heavy snow, especially at the beginning of this decade as well. In the 90s, there was a rise in multiculturalism and alternative media. There were movements like grunge and rave and increase in hip-hop, especially as the more increase in the American culture coming over and stuff like that. We had new technologies like satellite TV and more development for the internet, so more and more people are able to access those types of things as well. Overall, not just in the UK but around the world as well, politics at the beginning was starting to go a little bit more right-wing, but by the end of this decade, with the rise of the Labour Party and Tony Blair, Britain kind of goes towards a more left-wing stance in this decade. We also had cuts to social spending, and we had the beginning of this decade we also had the Gulf War as well, which meant quite a few people came over to the UK to kind of escape the war that was happening over there. There was also extreme advances in technology in this decade as well, so we obviously had the more advances on the internet. We also had things like gene therapy. We also had the first designer baby, or test tube baby as they were known by, and we also had Dolly the sheep, who was a genetically engineered sheep and survived for quite a long time. I think she's in a museum somewhere. If you're tempted to go see Dolly the sheep, I'm sure she's somewhere in Britain in a museum. We also had the National Assembly, active for Wales and Scottish parliaments, so they had their own devolved smallish government, so they could make more local policies and stuff like that, but obviously they'd still follow the main sort of voting into the big national party as well. We also had the EU making amendments like freedom of movement in 1992, so people could move freely between all the EU states, and that is sadly not going to be happening anymore because of wonderful Brexit. We also had free trade as well in 95, which obviously will be coming to a sad end soon. We also had the introduction of the euro in 1999, and everyone in Britain decided that we weren't going to join the EU, and I definitely remember the debate about whether we decided to follow the currency of everyone else in the EU or keep our pounds and pence. And obviously we kept our pounds and pence, and let's see how that's going to help out over the next few years. Technology wise, we had more consumer personal computers. We also had the introduction of things like Hotmail, Amazon, eBay, LOL, Yahoo, those classic internet pages that everyone has now these days have like grown up with. We also had the first MP3 players in this decade, memory sticks, DSLR cameras, the first iMac computer as well in the what is now the classic look for the iMac big computer. We also had CD burners and CD-ROMs for your new swanky computer. We also had DVDs coming in as well, which are becoming more and more obsolete as the days go by. We also had pagers. We had the 24-hour news cycle, meaning that once news had broken, everyone could literally know about it. And we could begin the start of being able to find out things all around the world. We also had portable CD players as well, so we could take our favourite albums with us everywhere we wanted to go. We also had computer programs like Windows 1.3, 95 and 98. We also had Mac OS X and we had Java as well. Transport-wise, the Channel Tunnel was open during the beginning of this decade, and it used to run from Waterloo to Gare de Nord and to Brussels as well. Obviously now the Channel Tunnel goes from St Pancras, but it was a lot more fun going from Waterloo. And environmental wise, we had a lot more focus on being sustainable and having sustainable development and environmental protection, especially because in the 90s there was a lot of deforestation in the South American rainforests, and people were trying to protect the loss of the rainforest, especially because there was a lot more trying to raise cattle and all sorts of stuff like that to produce the food for America. So people were making sure that we protected the things that actually take the carbon dioxide out of our atmosphere. Culture-wise, there was an embracing of environmentalism and entrepreneurship. So there was a good balance between the 80s being inspired to go off and do what you want to do career-wise, but also considering that your effects cause stuff in the world as well. There was a lot of more tattooing and body piercings as well, becoming a little bit more mainstream. Obviously nowadays everyone can basically do what they like with their bodies. We also had a few retro styles coming back, so it start of like a vintage scene. We also had extreme sports and more outdoor activities being popular, so lots of like skateboarding, snowboarding, all sorts of that, motocross, biking, all cool and extreme sports. We also had Britpop, which was a music scene that bled into fashion and stuff like that. So some top British bands that started that movement and stuff, and people like Spice Girls and Oasis and Blur, Radiohead, Massive Attack and stuff were all the forefront of the Britpop movement. Films in the 90s, we had some very classic films, so from all the things from like Toy Story, Titanic, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, all the Disney classics happened in the 90s. We also had the prequels for Star Wars, which I know divides people with all the sand and its coarse and roughness. We also had Jurassic Park, Men in Black, Terminator, Independence Day, The Matrix, The Mummy. So it's all classic amazing films that happened during the 90s. Music wise, so we have the grime scene to go with the grime stuff and all the fashion that went along with that. We also had gangster rap, R&B, teen pop, Euro dance music, as we were becoming more and more part of Europe. We had pop punk, Britpop. We had bands that I've mentioned earlier, but like the Spice Girls, Take That, the Chemical Brothers, Oasis, Blur, Radiohead, Massive Attack. Most of those are still about. The Spice Girls coming back this year and all fun stuff like that. Fashion wise, we obviously had the Rachel haircut from Friends, because Friends was a massive thing even over here in the UK in the 90s. We also had curtain hair, especially on guys, where you have your middle parting and it goes over your head. I don't know why people are trying to bring back at the moment. They can just cut their hair. We also had bleach tipped bits to the hair as well. So if you had a boy and you spiked your hair up to the inch of its life in points and then bleach blonde the very tops of it, because that was extremely disgusting. And we also had crimping as well. We also had things like slogan t-shirt, bucket hats, baggy jeans, scratched trainers, puffer jackets, sort of baggy clothes, and all sorts of strange things that you can find in Urban Outfitters. And it's like, why would you want to dress as though you're in the 90s? Video games wise, we had the birth of the PlayStation. We also had the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. We had the Super NES as well. It was a big year for games. And we had games like Metal Gear Solid, Pokemon, which was amazing series, a very big thing in the 90s. We had Gran Turismo, Tekken, Spyro the Dragon, Tomb Raider, which was a revolutionary game, Resident Evil, and Crash Bandicoot as well, just to name a few that were about at this time. Books wise, we had Harry Potter, that classic book series in 1997, which obviously has gone on to be a extremely profitable franchise even now. We had Stephen King books, we had Goosebumps series, and I know, especially in the UK, we had the TV programme in the 90s as well. So onto housing. Obviously our houses were getting a little bit bigger. There were more family homes, especially in the suburban areas. We also had family spaces, more back gardens, even more garages, different styles as well. So the houses weren't all built to look the same. Obviously they still were in some areas, especially on the more like council built houses, still look similar. But if you're building a new house, it was kind of, it was up to the style of the actual house builders to build different things. So we've got different brickworks, some more traditional ways of building coming back. Like we'll see one of the houses that has a little bit of the Tudor beamwork with bricks and stuff in it that's kind of similar to back how it was. And then we can see all different sorts of styles, a bit more modern ways of building. We also got a lot more driveways as well. Decking was a big thing in your back garden back then as well, and doing landscaping in your garden and stuff. Interior wise, if I could actually speak, there was a rise in a global economy, so obviously we're getting more and more in touch with the rest of the world, and this influenced how our interiors were. So we have all influences from all the way in Japan to America as well. We had things like the futon, which changed how furniture works. So you could change things from beds to sofas and little seats that you can move about. We also had a lot of orange coloured pine kitchens that were literally everywhere. And some people have probably still got their orange pine kitchen. We also had stenciling on the walls, so if you wanted to decorate your room, make it a little bit unique and fancy, then you whip out your stencil and your sponge and create your own little design and stuff. You also had corner baths they became a very big thing, and making your own little jacuzzi in your bathroom, which all the fancy people would have, and you would be very jealous of them as well. We also had still some dense florals as well. That was a kind of a remnant from the 80s. We also had wall-to-wall, wall-to-floor mirrors as well, especially on wardrobes. So they kind of have more built-in wardrobes with floor-to-ceiling mirrors, which was always creeped me out a bit, because why would you want to look at yourself as soon as you woke up in the morning? It's probably not the most attractive thing in the world. We also had inflatable furniture from America, so there was loads of like bubble sofas, bubble chairs, and it was always hilarious because you knew after a while as you'd like jump on it and you would expect the furniture to literally burst underneath you because it was so shoddily made. I know I remember wanting to have a bubble chair in various neon colours. They were such a fun little gimmicky furniture idea, which was very fun. There was also a heavily gender stereotypes for kids' rooms as well, which we'll see when we go through our furnishings. So it was very girly and pinks and purples and all sorts of that, and then for boys it was very blue and sports and stuff like that. It was a bit like that in the 80s as well, but obviously now we have gone towards having our own styles and everything, and the 90s was kind of a very transitional kind of period between still having the 80s reminiscences in our interiors and buildings, but obviously moving towards a more clean, modern, what we consider modern. If you're watching this in like 20 years time, I don't know where you would, but you'd be like, bleh. What our architecture and interior design is like at the moment. So we will move on to our fun facts of the 90s. So in 1990 we had the first ever Aldi food shop open in Britain. We also had the beginnings of BBC Radio 5. We also had the first ever Poundland open in the UK, and that year we had storms on Christmas Day that cut the power to nearly 100,000 homes, so that was probably a very enjoyable Christmas. And we also had the book Good Omens published, and if you've not been looking at advertising on Facebook, you would know that it's coming out on Amazon, so it's only taken them about a good couple of years to get that onto being a live action thing. In 1991, the Gulf War began. We also had Helen Sherman was the first British woman to go up into space, which is pretty impressive because Britain's not really had that many space people go up into space. In Europe, there was we had the longest steel roller coaster in Europe, which opened in a theme park in North Yorkshire, and we also had the first ever PC World open, and that was obviously because we all needed to get our beautiful new PC with Windows on it. We also had One Canada Square opened, becoming UK's tallest building at that time. So that is the Canary Wharf building in the Isle of Dogs. In 1992 we had a week-long rave festival that happened in Castle Morne Common, which sounds like a blast. We also had the new Labour government come into power. We also had a new 10p coin as well introduced, making it lighter and slightly different shape, I think. We also had a vote for allowing women to become priests in the Church of England, which will be passed through, and the first woman would be ordained by the end of this decade. We also have the withdrawal of vinyl records from shops as well, which is quite strange because everyone's bringing back vinyl records, so it didn't take people very long to want them to come back into the shops. In 93 we had the first ever Staples open in the UK to get all your office supplies and loveliness. I think the Staples doesn't actually exist anymore, which is really sad. And we also had Buckingham Palace open its doors to the public for the first time, so you could go around and look and awe at the palace and bring in lots of money from all the tourists that want to go look around there. We also had QVC being our first ever shopping channel in the UK, and we also had the publication of Train Spotting as well. In 1994 we had the first ever inverted roller coaster in Europe, which was Nemesis at Alton Towers. We also had the first ever national lottery, so you go buy your ticket, pick your numbers, and then you could win yourself £1 million or over, and that all began then. We also had the Sunday Trading Act, which allowed people to open on a Sunday just between a few hours a day. We also had our first ever Lidl open as well. So in 1995 we had domestic appliances would have to come with a plug beforehand. They could just come with open wires and you'd have to put the plug on yourself, but now it was the law had to come with a plug. We also had a phone 1 day changes where they changed all the area codes in the UK to actually make, I think, more sense, so each area had a similar code to each other. We also had at least 1% of the UK being able to access the internet as well. In 1996 we had the split up of Take That, and I know lots of people were extremely sad about that, but in the early 2000s they get back together again. We also had the formation of Spice Girls and them releasing their first ever single. We also had the first ever genetically modified food on sale in the UK as well, which obviously gets banned by the end of this decade because they're ridiculous. In 1997 Tony Blair becomes Prime Minister of the UK. We also have the death of Princess Diana, and the country went into mourning for a good number of months, and we had her funeral, and there was a park opened in her honour as well. We also had the first Harry Potter book. We had the new 50p coin where they made it a hexagon shape. We also had the British Library opening its first ever reading room in its new site on Euston Road, and you can still on Euston Road if you're ever in the King's Cross area. In 1998 we had the construction of the Millennium Dome, which was there to celebrate the millennium coming in and all the wonderful new things they wanted to do in the millennia. We also had the Good Friday Agreement, so that the Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland fighting would stop. We also had the introduction of the £2 coin as well, which is a big coin with 2 different colours in it. We also had DVDs becoming a more widespread format as well to watch your films and TV programs on. And then in 1999 itself we had the introduction of minimum wage, so people had to give people enough money to actually live and have their own home and stuff like that. We also had the Millennium Dome finished and open to the public to get them all prepared for the new millennia. We also had the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff open as well, which is a big new big new stadium for rugby and concerts and all sorts of things. Now it's called the Principality Stadium, which is a stupid name. We also had a solar eclipse as well, which fascinated everyone. I know, I remember going out in the garden and tracking the eclipse on a piece of paper through a telescope, and them telling you all not to just stare straight at the sun or you'll go blind. We also had the London Eye being lifted into place as well, so that was all open for the millennia. We also had the Cardiff Bay Barrage open as well, and obviously we had the Millennium Bug and all the problems that was going to cause as soon as the clock struck 12 for the millennia. So I'm going to leave this here and leave you with a tour of how our town has changed, and hopefully I will see you in the new millennia and in our next episode to see how our town has changed. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.